Imagine being able to turn $6,500 a year into over $500,000. That sounds almost impossible, but it seems more plausible once you understood compound interest. Interest is basically a rate that is charged on loans or borrowed money. So for something like bonds, where you're essentially giving a company a loan, you're provided with interest. There's two types of interest, simple and compound. For simple interest, let's say you invest $5,000 into a bond that has a 6% interest rate every year for 5 years. Every year for those 5 years, 6% of $5,000 will be the amount you get back from your investment. So the formula is just initial investment times the interest rate multiplied by the total time. So here it would end up being $5,000 times 6% times 5, which is $1,500. This is the amount of profit you gained on that $5,000 investment. So the total amount you leave with is $6,500. Now that we understood simple interest, what is compound interest? Compound interest is a process of earning interest not only on the initial amount of money you invested, but also the interest rate that's been added over time. Let's go back to the same example. Let's say instead of simple interest, there was compound interest here. You have your initial value of $5,000 and a 6% annual interest rate for 5 years. After 1 year, you'll get a 6% on the $5,000, and that'll leave you off with $5,300. Second year, you'll end up with $5,300 times 6%, and that's going to give you $5,618. So instead of ending up with $5,600, you ended up with $18 more. This may seem like a really small change, but when this happens over a long period of time, like let's say 30 years, compound interest tends to build up quick. Let's look at the same scenario again, but over 30 years rather than just 5. So if you started out with an initial investment of $5,000 and had a 6% annual interest rate that was compounded for over 30 years, you would end up with around $28,000. While with simple interest, with the same amount of initial investment and the same interest rate, you would only end up with around $14,000. Now this is if you only had the initial investment of $5,000. Let's say you started with no initial investment, but every year you would end up putting around $6,500 into your Roth IRA. By the end of those 30 years, you would end up with a whopping $513,000.